My family invested $40K in my brother and ignored me my whole life. I built a $1 million company in secret while they went broke. Now they're begging, and what I did left them speechless. I'm 29 years old. I run my own custom products company. And the truth is, I need to tell this story because what happened with my family basically forced me to grow up alone. And now that things got bad for them, turns out I do exist. I guess I should start at the beginning. When I was a kid and my parents, Thomas and Jennifer, decided that my younger brother Connor was basically the center of the universe, and I was, I don't know, like a piece of furniture that was there but nobody really noticed. I don't remember exactly when all this started, honestly, but I do remember perfectly when I was like 8 years old and Connor was born. My parents were so excited. You know, that typical baby that arrives and everyone loses their minds. At first I thought it was normal. I mean, he's a baby. Of course they're going to pay attention to him. But the thing is that attention never ended. And as Connor grew up, everything became about him. Everything. When I turned 10, my mom completely forgot my birthday because she was organizing a massive party for Connor's second birthday, and when I mentioned it to her later, she said, "Oh, sorry, sweetie. It's just that Connor needed this and that. You know how young children are." And I just thought, but I'm a child too, aren't I? But well, I learned quickly that it was better not to say anything. Things only got worse over the years. Connor was the golden child, the one who could do everything wrong and still be perfect. He got bad grades, and my parents said, "Don't worry, champ, you'll do better next time." I got straight A's and barely received a good job or a well done, said while they watched TV. Connor played soccer and my parents didn't miss a single game. They screamed his name, brought signs. I was on the debate team and won several state competitions, and my parents literally never came to see me compete, not once. There was always something more important to do with Connor, or Connor had a game that day, or Connor needed to be driven to a friend's house. Always Connor. When I was 16, something happened that basically made me realize I was never going to be enough for them. I had participated in a national youth entrepreneurship competition, you know, those where you have to create a complete business plan and present it in front of judges and everything. I worked on that project for months, literally months, researching markets, making financial projections, designing marketing strategies. I won first place in my category. They gave me a prize of $5,000 and a partial scholarship for business studies. I got home super excited, like it was the most important moment of my life up to that point. And when I walked in, my parents were in the living room with Connor, looking at a logo he had drawn in his art class. Connor was like 14 years old at that time. I told them, "I won the national competition. Look at the check and the certificate." And my dad barely looked up and said, "That's nice, Benjamin. Congratulations." And then immediately turned to Connor and started praising his logo, saying it was brilliant, that he had an incredible future in design, that he was so creative. Connor hadn't even won anything. It was literally a homework drawing. But my parents acted like he had painted the Mona Lisa. I stood there with my certificate in my hand, feeling like an idiot, and at that moment, something inside me just shut off. I stopped waiting for their approval. I stopped trying to impress them. I stopped sharing my achievements with them. The next year, Connor announced he wanted to start a custom t-shirt business because he had seen a video on YouTube and thought it looked easy. He was 15 years old and literally had zero business experience or knowledge, but my parents went crazy. He was a genius, a visionary, the next Steve Jobs. My dad immediately pulled out $15,000 from their savings to buy him equipment, computers, an industrial t-shirt printer that cost like $8,000 alone. They converted the garage into an office for him, hired an accountant to advise him. My mom left her part-time job to help him manage the business. I was there watching all this and thinking, what the hell? 2 months earlier, I had presented them with a serious business idea, with real market research, financial projections, contacted suppliers, all professional. I asked them for $3,000 to start and my dad told me no, that I was too young, that I needed to focus on my studies, that businesses were risky. But Connor says he wants to make t-shirts and money rains on him. I couldn't believe it. Literally couldn't. So I decided to do it alone. I took the $5,000 I had won in the competition, got a part-time job at a restaurant, and started my own custom products business in secret. I used the school library to work on my computer because I didn't want my parents to know anything. I started small, making custom mugs and keychains that I sold online. I learned everything on my own, from how e-commerce worked to how to handle inventory and customer service. I worked until 2 or 3 inches the morning every day, went to school, then to work on my business. I was exhausted all the time, but every sale I made gave me a satisfaction I had never felt before. Meanwhile, Connor's business was an absolute disaster. The t-shirts he made were horrible. The designs looked like they were made by a 5-year-old, because they basically were. He took weeks to fulfill orders, and when he finally shipped them, they arrived in the wrong size or with printing errors. Customers asked for returns all the time, left terrible reviews online, and Connor just didn't understand why things weren't working. But my parents kept telling him he was amazing, that he just needed time, that all great entrepreneurs face obstacles at the beginning. They gave him more money, like another $10,000, for new equipment because Connor insisted the problem was that his tools weren't good enough. I graduated from high school with honors, academic, scholarships that covered like 60% of my college tuition, and acceptances from several good universities. My parents barely acknowledged my graduation. It was like, "Oh yeah, congratulations." But during the whole ceremony, they were distracted because Connor had had a problem with a big order that day and urgently needed their help. They didn't even take pictures of me in my cap and gown. Not one. 2 weeks after graduating, I announced I was moving to another state for college. My parents were surprised, like, "We thought you'd go to the local university to stay close to family." The truth is, I didn't want to be near them at all, but I just said the university there had a better program for what I wanted to study. My dad told me they had saved some money for my college, like $25,000, and I could use it for tuition and expenses. I accepted the money, but I already had other plans for it. I moved in August to a small apartment I shared with 2 roommates, and the first thing I did was invest that tuition money in expanding my business. I already had like $12,000 saved from my own sales and from the restaurant job, so with the $25,000 my parents gave me, I had serious capital to work with. I bought better equipment, hired 2 part-time people to help me with production, improved my website, invested in advertising. My business started growing fast. Like really fast. By December of my first semester, I was already generating net profits of like $8,000 a month. Obviously, I didn't tell my parents anything. I was still enrolled in college because I needed to keep up appearances, and also because I wanted the degree, but I dedicated like 80% of my time to the business. My classes were mostly online, so I could manage both things. Every time my parents called, which was rare, like once a month if that, I told them everything was going well with school and changed the subject quickly. They never asked much anyway. They always ended up talking about Connor and his business dramas. Because yeah, Connor's business was still a monumental failure. By the time I had been gone for a year, Connor had already burned through like $40,000 of my parents' money and had absolutely nothing to show for it. 0 profits, only losses. My parents were starting to worry about finances, but still wouldn't accept that Connor simply didn't know what he was doing. They kept blaming external factors. The market is tough, the competition is too strong, he needs more time. Connor was 17 by then, and literally spent his days playing video games in the garage that was supposedly his office. By my 3rd year of college, my business was already generating like $35,000 a month in net profits. I had hired a team of 8 people. We had a real office, big corporate clients, stable contracts. I was 21 years old and running a legitimate company that was on track to make over $500,000 a year. I felt amazing, like I had achieved all this completely on my own, without help from anyone, and every day, I proved to myself that I was worth something, that I was capable, that my parents were completely wrong about me. Then I got a call from my dad. It was weird because he almost never called me. Usually it was my mom who did when they remembered me. Thomas sounded strange, like uncomfortable, and started with small talk about how I was doing, how was school, that kind of thing. I knew something was coming, so I just waited. Finally, he told me that Connor had decided to close his t-shirt business because it wasn't working. No kidding. But that he had a brilliant new idea for a nutritional supplements business and needed like $30,000 to start. My dad asked me if I could help, like lend them money or invest in Connor's new business. I was quiet for a moment because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked him, "Are you asking me for money?" And he said yes, because you're part of the family and Connor really needs this support. This time it's gonna work. He's matured a lot and I learned from his mistakes. I told him, "Dad, I need you to understand something. I'm not giving Connor a single cent." My dad got angry, started saying I was selfish, that family helps each other, that someday I might need help and then I'd regret not being there for my brother. And then I told him, "You know what, Dad? I don't need your help or anyone's. I have my own business, a real one, a successful one. I make more money in a month than you guys make in half a year. The money you gave me for college, I used to start my company and it's been the best investment of my life. I don't need anything from you, and I never will." My mom called me like 20 times that day, leaving furious messages, saying I had stolen their money, that I was a liar, that how dare I waste my education. My dad sent me long emails saying I was ungrateful, that they had given me everything, that I owed them that money. I didn't respond to any messages. I blocked their numbers, for a while because I needed peace of mind. Like a month later, my mom Jennifer showed up at my office. I don't know how she got the address. I guess she looked me up online or something. She arrived without warning and asked to speak with me. My employees didn't know what to do, so they let her in. When she walked into my office and saw everything, the computers, the equipment, the big space with my team working, she went pale. I think at that moment she realized I hadn't been lying or exaggerating. She sat down and started crying, saying they needed help, that they had spent all their savings on Connor, that they had credit card debts, that my dad had taken out a second mortgage on the house to finance Connor's failed businesses, and now they couldn't pay. She asked me to lend them money, like $50,000. She promised they'd pay me back. I told her no. I told her that my whole life they had ignored me, made me feel invisible, that they had given everything to Connor while I didn't receive even a fraction of that attention or support. I told her that I had built my success completely alone while they threw their money at Connor, who didn't even appreciate it. I didn't owe them anything. My mom told me I was cruel, that how could I turn my back on them when they needed me most? And I just thought, really? Now they need me? I told her to leave and not to contact me again unless it was to truly apologize for how they treated me my whole life. She left crying and I felt horrible. But also, I don't know, kind of liberated somehow. Like 6 months passed without hearing anything from them. I graduated from college, my business kept growing. I had opened a second location in another state. Things were going incredibly well for me. And then one day Connor showed up at my office, just like my mom had done. He looked terrible, like really bad, unkempt, tired. He told me he needed to talk to me. Connor explained that he had tried 2 other businesses after the t-shirt one, both also financed by my parents, and both had completely failed. Now my parents were in serious financial trouble. The bank was going to foreclose on the house. They had like $80,000 in credit card debt. My dad had had to file for personal bankruptcy. Connor told me he felt terrible, that it was his fault, that he had wasted all our parents' money chasing stupid dreams that were never going to work. I asked him what he expected me to do about it. He told me if I could help them, if I could give him a job at my company, that he'd do anything. I told him no, that he had had all the opportunities in the world and he had wasted them, that I wasn't going to rescue him. He called me a son of a bitch, told me I was bitter and resentful, that I was punishing them for things from the past. I told him to leave and that if he showed up again, I'd call security. He left yelling that I was a heartless asshole. Like 3 months later, I found out from an aunt, my mom's sister, basically the only relative who still talked to me, that my parents had lost the house. They had moved to a small apartment in a not-so-good neighborhood. My dad was working 2 part-time jobs to pay off debts. My mom had had to go back to work too. Connor had apparently abandoned them, moved 2 states away and barely spoke to them. My aunt told me my parents were devastated, physically and emotionally, and that they wished things had been different with us. I didn't know what to feel. Part of me felt bad for them, because nobody deserves to lose everything like that, but another part of me thought, This is what happens when you prioritize the wrong son, when you put all your eggs in a basket that clearly had holes. I didn't do anything for months, just continued with my life. Then I received a letter from my mom. It was long, handwritten, and basically it was her apologizing for everything. She admitted they had been terrible to me, that they had ignored me, that they had shown obvious favoritism toward Connor. She said she deeply regretted it, that now she understood how much damage they had done to me, that if she could turn back time, she would do everything differently. She didn't ask me for money in the letter. She just asked for forgiveness, and told me she understood if I could never forgive them. But she needed me to know they were truly sorry. I cried reading that letter. I don't know why, like I had waited for those words my whole life, and finally I had them, but they came too late, and under the wrong circumstances. I felt furious and sad at the same time. I kept the letter stored away and didn't respond for weeks. My aunt called me again, telling me my parents were being sued by one of the credit card companies, that they were going to garnish their wages, that basically their life was a total disaster. She told me I didn't have to help them if I didn't want to, but to at least consider talking to them, that they had changed, that they really regretted it. I told her I'd think about it. I spent like 2 weeks thinking about what to do. I talked to a therapist about it. He had started therapy like a year earlier, when I realized I had a lot of unresolved issues with my family, and he helped me process my feelings. In the end, I decided I didn't want to carry resentment my whole life, but I also didn't want to be my family's personal bank. I called my mom. She immediately started crying when she heard my voice. I told her I had read her letter, that I appreciated the apologies, but that she needed to understand that the relationship between us was broken and that it would take a lot of time and work to repair it, if it was even possible. I told her I wasn't going to give them money, but that I was willing to help them in other ways, like connecting them with a financial advisor I know, helping them make a budget, that kind of thing. I made it clear that this didn't mean we were okay, just that I was willing to try something. My mom accepted and said it was more than they deserved. We agreed to meet the following week. I went to their apartment, and honestly, seeing them living like that was tough. The place was small, old, nothing like the big house where we grew up. My parents looked years older than they should. We sat down and talked, really talked. Like for the first time in my life, we had an honest conversation about everything. Thomas admitted he had been a terrible father to me, that his obsession with Connor had completely blinded his judgment. Jennifer said the same thing, that she had let herself get carried away with wanting to give everything to Connor and in the process lost her other son. I asked them why Connor was always more important, and they couldn't answer. My dad said Connor was more expressive, more demanding of attention, and that I always seemed to be fine on my own, so they assumed I didn't need as much. I told them that was the stupidest thing I'd ever heard, that all children need attention and love from their parents, not just the ones who scream the loudest. I helped them organize their finances, connected them with the financial advisor. We made a debt payment plan. I made it very clear that this was a one-time support, that I wasn't going to become their financial lifeline, that they had to take responsibility for their situation. They accepted everything, like really humbly, which was something I had never seen in them before. I asked them about Connor. My mom said he practically didn't talk to them, that he had washed his hands of the whole situation, and that when they tried to contact him, he said he was busy or that he'd call them later and never did. My dad looked devastated talking about it. I think he finally realized that the son he had put all his hopes in didn't really care about him as much as he thought. We've had a few more conversations since then, like once a month or so. Things aren't perfect, not even close. And honestly, I don't know if I'll ever have a normal relationship with them. There's still a lot of pain there, a lot of resentment that doesn't disappear just because they said sorry. But I guess it's a start, or something like that. My business is better than ever. We just signed a huge contract with a national corporation that basically ensures us stability for the next 5 years. I'm 29 years old. I'm a millionaire. And I got here completely on my own. That's something nobody can take away from me. Sometimes I think about how things would have been if my parents had given me even a fraction of the support they gave Connor. Maybe we could have built something together. Maybe our relationship would be different. But then I realized that maybe I needed to do everything alone to prove to myself what I was capable of. I don't know. It's complicated. Last week, my mom called to tell me she was proud of me, that she always had been, even though she never showed it. I said, "Thank you, but I'm not sure I believe her yet. I guess time will tell, if they've really changed, or if this is just because now I'm successful and they no longer have Connor to bet on. For now, I'm taking things day by day, keeping my boundaries firm and focusing on my own life. And that's enough for now, I think."